I am the proud descendant of 4 generations of magnificent teachers, principals, and superintendents. I'm lucky enough to come from more than 300 years of collective teaching experience. I was raised in a family that considered education the highest priority and teaching one of life's best pursuits. And so, of course, since the day I was born, since the day I could verbalize it, I've been the girl whose dream it was to never be a teacher. My firm stance on this baffled my public school teacher mother, but she put on the supportive mom hat when I said I wanted to go into politics and bought me West Wing DVDs and sent me on my way. And then, 4 years later, when I joined Teach for America, she smiled, that all-knowing mom smile, laughed, said I told you so, took me shopping for shoes I could stand in for 12 hours, which are not these, by the way. And as if she needed more I told you so fodder, 6 years after first entering the classroom, I am the founder and executive director of one of Louisiana's best public schools, Thrive. But Thrive is a really different kind of school, one that by all rights shouldn't even exist. We are the dream school for teachers who have always wanted to give their kids more but have been handicapped by the traditional school day. You see, Thrive is a boarding school, and we serve only the most at-risk kids. During our first year of operation last year, our students saw more growth than any other school in the state. And we did it not with the highest achieving kids, but with the kids who were most at risk. We are an ideal place where a child's zip code has nothing to do with their limitless potential. But where does something like this come from? Well, like anything else incredible, just bragging a little bit, Thrive comes from personal experience, coupled with creativity, relentless pursuit, luck, and the naive determination to take on the giants of the world. In keeping with today's theme of Enact, I want to tell you all a little bit about the creation of Thrive. Not the whole story, mind you. For that, you have to buy me a very large drink after. But just a few stories, 3 actually stories, that really encompass everything that Thrive is. But first, let me set the stage. This was about 2 weeks into the school year, my 3rd year of teaching. I got a phone call from our school secretary telling me that one of our students had been killed during a stabbing in a neighborhood street fight. I never actually had her sit in my classroom, but this one student, her entire life, changed the entire direction of mine. As I grappled personally with her death, I grew increasingly frustrated with her life. Altanique was, and her sisters are, incredibly talented, beautiful, gifted girls who, if they had been raised with my privileges, would have been exceedingly successful. Instead, life had offered them lack of opportunity, poor education, and ultimately death. For months after, I thought, what would I do? How could I give them all of those opportunities that I knew they deserved? And this idea of a boarding school was rolling around in my head, but I was absolutely terrified of it. And so begins story number 1, or how I finally found the courage to form Thrive. February 2011, this was the Teach for America 20th Anniversary Summit. It was a big conference, and I was sitting in a session next to this random stranger, and I was telling him all about my ideas for Thrive. But instead of telling him all the great things that it could be, I was focusing on the ways that it wasn't going to work and everything that was wrong with it. And he looked at me and he said, "Shut up." And I don't just do it. And I don't know if I was just in the exact right moment at the exact right time, but I heard it. And I thought, okay, I'm all in. I went home that day, stopped at the bookstore on the way back from the airport and picked up a copy of Nonprofit for Dummies, which is an actual book. And with the help of this incredible group of people, within 2 months, had written a complete charter that now serves these incredible kids. That was a moment for me, a moment in time that I will always remember. Whenever during this process I started to overthink things, and I started to think of all the reasons why it wouldn't work, instead of the ways that it could, I took myself back to that conference, to that complete stranger, took a really deep breath, leaned all the way in, and just jumped. So story number 2. What I like to call throwing my hat over the wall, what my parents at the time called the worst decision ever. Once I decided I was going to do this, I wanted to do this. There's this old Irish story about these boys who come across this wall, and this is a really tall wall, and they really want to climb over it, but they can't see a way. And so they take their hats and they throw them over the wall, and they think, okay, we got to find a way now. I got to go get my hat. And so I threw my hat over the wall. I quit my job. Not immediately, mind you, but I went to my principal and I said, this is what I want to do, and I'm not coming back next year, and no matter what happens, don't let me have my job back. I threw my hat over the wall, and it was terrifying. And now, all of a sudden, my hat's on the other side of the wall, and I have to learn how to fundraise, and I don't know how to raise money. But I learned because I had to. One of the things that people have asked me the most about this process is, how did you know what to do and when? And the incredible thing that I've learned is that people who do something creative, who do something unique, none of us have ever had any idea what we were doing at any point along the way. We just make it up as we go, and we hope that nobody notices. You know, at this point, I like to say that my confidence was about here and my freak out factor was about here. And then something awesome happened. That first $10,000 check came. That first person had just that tiny bit of faith that we could be something awesome. And all of a sudden, the freak out started to go down, and the confidence started to go up. And slowly, painfully slowly, we started to raise more money and have more successes, and the confidence went up and the freak out went down. And I like to think that they're at a happy equilibrium now. You know, there are still days when I freak out plenty. You will find me underneath a table with a jar of frosting in one hand and a bottle of wine in the other. And it happens, but on those days, the confidence can say, girl, it's gonna be okay. And I listen to her because it's been okay. You know, the really, really incredible thing is that I got to this awesome equilibrium, but it all started with throwing my hat over that wall. And now for the last story before I get to brag on my kids, what I like to call Sesame Street life lessons. So this was just a few months into the founding of Thrive, and I still didn't really have a lot of direction. I was just running around town taking meetings with anybody who would listen to me, and they all basically went the same way. You are a great girl. This is a great idea. Baton Rouge absolutely needs this. Probably not gonna work. And no one was unkind, and very few people straight up said, this isn't gonna work. But nobody was overwhelmingly confident that it was going to happen. And so I made a decision in those meetings that I was not going to fail. And I know how simple that sounds, but to simply take that option off the table, where there's no longer okay, let me find the out clause here, where there's no longer a moment of you that thinks that this could fail, makes such a big difference. And what it always reminded me of is that I never knew how I was going to get there, but I knew there was a way. And there was this Sesame Street video about the adverbs of motion. I think Tina Fey talked about it in her book, Bossy Pants, but over, under, around, or through. I never knew what it was going to look like. I never knew how ugly it was going to be. I never knew how much it was going to suck to do it, but there was always going to be a way. No matter what happens, I didn't stop. There is no book on how to open a charter school. There's no book on anyone's dream of how to do it. You think and you learn and you listen to the smartest people around you and you screw up a lot, but you don't stop. Over, under, around, or through, there was always a way. And now I get to brag on my kids like any good parent and show you plenty of pictures of them. So we have really incredible kids, but there's one student who I think really exemplifies what Thrive is. This student came to us when he was 13 in the 6th grade. His mom said he was failing all of his classes, he couldn't get along with anybody, and in her own words, I just don't know what to do with him. So we said, okay, let's take a look. And so 2 weeks into the school year, yeah, sure enough, he's failing all of his classes, he can't make friends, we're having problems with him. So we gather our whole team up, and the beauty of having them 5 days a week, 24 hours a day, we had influence over every aspect of life. So we made a behavior plan, we made an academic intervention plan, we made a counseling plan, we made his own reward system. We put all of these different pieces in place that worked together cohesively. And slowly, but not that slowly, about 2 months later, he started doing well, and his grades started rising, and he started making more friends, and he started doing better. And by the end of the year, he was the top student in every class, and he went from being the failing student on the LEAP test to not just passing, but excelling, getting the highest score of anybody in our school. He went from the kid who had no friends to the kid who was the leader of the group. And mind you, not always the leader in the best direction, but leadership is leadership. And he just all of a sudden turned into this awesome kid, the very best version of himself. His mom used to say to me, or said once to me, that she used to imagine visiting him in prison, and now she imagines herself at his college graduation. We have 50 kids. Eventually we'll have 350 kids, all of them with stories like this one, all of them with their own giants to fight. And the beautiful thing about the process that it took to get here is that now I get to fight right alongside them. I used to think that my giant fighting days would one day be over. Like today, when we're here, we've got happy kids and we've got a great school and everything's successful. Now I can go take a nap or go do something else. And I've realized that my giant fighting days are never behind me. I have big giants, like how to fund the residential program for forever, or how to build us a new home because we're running out of space in our current one. I have small giants, like how to put together bunk beds when I can, barely, change a tire. Or small ones like taking a guinea pig to the emergency room after she broke her paw, which was traumatic for everybody. There are gross giants, like cleaning up a toilet that's overflowing at 11 o'clock at night, and that's also traumatic for everybody. I will always live in the land of giants, mine and my kids, but we've learned how to fight them together. When you start doing something on your own and you no longer have a boss, you don't realize how much you really want a boss, or someone to tell you what to do, or a list of instructions, or anything, a sign from God, anything, tell me what to do next. And then a few months ago at a craft fair, I got the only sign, the only instruction list I will ever need. It's the first thing that I see in the morning, it's the last thing that I see at night, and it watches over me every moment in between. Today, I will slay a giant. Thank you.